Our final Friday football show before Christmas. So happy holidays, everybody. Myself, Tim Benz, and Mike DeCourcy with you. We will be with you after the Christmas holiday next week as we preview the Browns game. So keep that in mind. Make sure you click on, as always, 9 o'clock every Friday, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's. Great place to go on Sunday for the game that we are previewing today. Steelers versus Lions. 80 rotating taps, 500 available craft beers. Get yourself a steak and a stone directly across from PNC Park at the base of the Clemente Bridge. Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten Network, and Fox joins me as always right now here at Trib Live as we get ready to look ahead to a big game for the Steelers in terms of positioning for the playoffs potentially, and just in terms of the opponent. I think this is going to be a fun game, potentially a higher scoring game on Sunday. Should be a good watch. Mike, I will let everyone know because now you have alerted me and made me paranoid. I am not wearing a Cincinnati Bengals jersey. I guess based on the lighting and just through the camera, you could kind of see I might look even darker than what it is. It is not black and orange. This is a Syracuse number 44, as is tradition. In fact, here, I'll see if I can turn around here. It's a
Floyd Little
44. Floyd was a great guy. I loved Floyd Little. I also like the irony of me having a jersey that says Little. So I love this jersey. This is a Christmas gift of a couple years ago. I was reminded of it. And Floyd Little was one of the greats. He was so good to all of us who were student reporters there at Syracuse. I was a big fan of his. So if I got a 44, even though they didn't have names back in the day on the back of the jerseys, I wanted a Floyd Little just in case that was going to be my Christmas gift, which it ended up being a few years ago. Now, Mike, let's get right into it for this game against the Lions. Our 30,000-foot big picture view state of the Steelers heading into game day. Why don't you start with yours?
Well, I will start, first of all, by saying I'm really curious about yours because I have no idea. We have these things in broadcast business called rundowns, which is basically the format of the show.
Ours is very complex, very intricate.
If you've ever watched, pardon the interruption, they actually share theirs with you. So I'm very curious about yours, but I'll start by saying that I'm not someone who's willing to start printing playoff tickets. They've played two very good games in a row. I was surprised at the reaction to the second of those, which was probably their best overall performance of the season against the Dolphins, being quite as and I'm not necessarily talking about fans because fans are actually still more in the wait and see mode. But the coverage I thought was very was much more positive in terms of the projection of what it meant. The performance, you'd say whatever good you want about the Dolphins game. I'm not sure you can say enough. They did everything they wanted to do on Monday night. But I still think that they have a lot to prove. And I'm not saying they have to go out and beat the Lions in order to do that. But they have a lot they have to prove and improve. And they have a lot they have to hold off in terms of the injury to TJ Watt. We still don't know where that's going relative to the season. And Nick Herbig now added to that. A week ago, I told you on this program not to worry too much about what the 1-11 number had been because I thought they were better situated to replace TJ than they had ever been during previous absences. And now, at least for the moment and possibly for Sunday, half of that, or the bigger half, maybe, if there's such a thing, Nick Herbig is now also on the injury list, and we don't know what his status might be for Sunday. So I'm not skeptical necessarily, but I'm still wanting to see more improvement and more consistency. And as I said, they can lose on Sunday and still show it, but they have to continue to advance in the areas of the game that have been problematic.
Well, you were curious about mine, so I'll just lay it out for you. All right. I saw a meme at the start of the week online, and it was John Daly and Tiger Woods. It looked like on a putting green before a tournament. And Daly is there looking totally John Daly. Frumpy, plump, the long, scraggly white beard. Tiger has his back to the camera, strapping in his golf shirt, muscles ripping out of the golf shirt, looking sleek as he always does. And over both heads are the numbers 8 and 6. And over Tiger's face is the Detroit Lions logo, and over Daly's face is the Steelers logo.
Oh,
and I
wow.
thought that was the perfect encapsulation, because everybody looks at the Lions and says, now that's a team right there. They're 8 and 6.
Yes.
You look at the Steelers, you're like, how are they 8 and 6? So it's a completely different view of the same record for two very different teams. And I just thought that visual summed it up very nicely, because I think there are a lot of people looking at the Steelers going, well, I guess they are 8 and 6. I guess they are a major champion like John Daly once was. And we all made the Lions out to be Tiger. The Lions were Tiger to start the year. They were an NFC favorite, one of the NFC favorites at the very least. Sleek offense, lots of weapons. But you know what? When you dig deep, like Tiger, they're kind of flawed. So, there are some issues facing the Lions too, even though they feel more like a team that's 8 and 6, that if you bat your eyelashes, they could wind up 11 and 6 and making a playoff run. Whereas I think you look at the Steelers and say, even if they finish 11 and 6, they're going nowhere in the playoffs. So it is quite the juxtaposition for two teams that have the same record going in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. One of the things that the Lions season says to me is, can we stop declaring? I mean, I guess we can't, because there are people in the media who don't know how to do their jobs, Tim. They are out there. Can those of you who don't know how to do your jobs learn how to do your jobs and stop declaring this is the best team in the NFL after they've played 3 games? Can we stop? Can you stop? I'm not going to say we, because I would never do that. But can you stop doing that? Because they played 3 games and there were all kinds of things all over the internet, all over television about how they're the best team in the league. And now they're 8 and 6. And that's without, they haven't had like an Asa Hutchinson go down or whatever, like they did last year. No, they're still pretty much the same team, and they're 8 and 6. So maybe they could still make the run you talked about. I mean, the Steelers in 2005 were around this neighborhood, around this point in the season. The game schedule is different now, so it's not identical, but you can do that. But this need to anoint is ridiculous. So they have an excellent offense. That has not changed. And statistically, they still have a pretty effective defense. When I go looking through, what's the statistic that says they're 8 and 6? It's hard to find. It's not easy. They don't turn it over. They're a halfway decent defense statistically. They're an overpowering offense statistically, and yet they're 8 and 6. I think schedule is a factor in that. And we'll get to that relative to the Steelers as well.
Well, I also think that part of the reason why people keep looking at the Lions and say, well, they're going to wake up sometime, or they're going to be the team that you just described. It might be the wild card that makes a run in a tough conference, is because they never get on a losing streak. Like, they've gone loss, win since week 9 of the regular season. Or 9 weeks in a row. I'm sorry, 9 weeks in a row, they've gone loss, win. So while they never get going, they also never completely go off the tracks, which I think makes a lot of people feel like due to that, they can at least right the ship, and they're always going to be in a position where they could be the better team on a given Sunday or a given Saturday in the playoffs, because, they just don't get into a prolonged funk.
Right. But I maybe you found something, but when I was going through them, I couldn't find anything that was a significant flaw in them statistically. Analytically, they're a pretty sound football team. I was shocked when I saw some of the stats that are out there relative to them. So one thing that an examination of them led me to was, and I think it can lead into our keys to victory segment.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to segue right in. Like, we can get to our keys to victory right now.
From the standpoint of playing against this team, I don't think that you can go in and feel comfortable that you can control them. I think only one team really has, in this point in the season, effectively controlled this offense. I think you have to go into some games believing, obviously you're not going out there to not play defense. You're going out there to do the most effective job that you can. But I think you're going to have to outscore them. And that starts with an aggressive approach to offense. And aggression can mean a lot of things. You can run the ball aggressively. I mean, nobody runs it passively, but you can run it inventively and aggressively, and not just we're going to overpower you, but we're going to hit you in the positions where you're either weak or we create weakness. I think sometimes the Steelers get into their running attack, and we're going to overpower these guys, and they're not built for that. With the two backs that are getting most of the carries now, nearly all, Caleb Johnson, very rarely getting into games now. You're not built to overpower anybody with your running game. You have to, if you're going to run the ball, and I think the Steelers will intend to do that, you have to be really inventive with that to beat this team. And then on the passing game side, I think that you have to be willing to air it out Baltimore style. I don't think that you're going to beat them consistently by throwing short. I think you need to be willing to go deep because it's one area where I think that if there's any vulnerability in this team, it can be to the deep ball.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a stat because you're looking for a stat you said earlier that indicates that the Lions are, significantly flawed somewhere. I'll give you one that amplifies that exact point. The Lions give up a league-high 129 yards per game to receivers aligned out wide. And over the past 6 weeks, they've given up a league-high 203 per game to the wide receiver position in general. So that's encouraging for the Steelers as they come into this game. It's discouraging when you consider they kind of only have one wide receiver in DK Metcalf. Now, the odd thing about that is, and maybe that makes me want to rethink my key here, but it does just speak to the wide receiver position writ large, not necessarily where they're going to be on the field, but they rediscovered the middle of the field last week.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to go there again. And when I say afraid, I'm choosing my words very carefully there because the Lions do a decent job usually against tight ends. As I just talked about, they're most vulnerable to the outside as opposed to the inside. They have Anzalone. They have Campbell, guys who are decent inside linebackers. They play base more than any other team in the National Football League, so they don't feel like they have to get into sub to protect the middle of the field in any sort of way. But I would just implore the Steelers to not forget about the middle of the field. How about that? Right. Even if you do want to work outside the numbers because that's where the Lions are the most vulnerable, it makes sense. I get it. But don't ignore the middle of the field because when you saw Miami play cover 2 and they felt emboldened to go there, they were proficient at it. Like, right. It was almost all of Rodgers over the middle passing yards for the entire season were in that game on Monday night. Yes. And his best throws of Monday night, the 3 throws over 10 air yards that he hit were all the middle of the field. Now, some of that was run after the catch when DK was shedding Minkah Fitzpatrick and running to the end zone, which was a great highlight. But I'm just imploring the Steelers, even if it's not the primary game plan because of what the Lions do well versus what they do poorly, don't forget that it exists and still use it when appropriate.
Yeah, I think the passes, the couple of passes to Muth, Pat Freiermuth fit what you're talking about as well. It doesn't seem like that they feel comfortable with any of the other tight ends in that area of the field. So when space is created for him, if you are stretching that downfield passing game and using DK to do that, and now Valdez-Scantling has shown at least that he can stretch you a little bit. The first game, the Baltimore game, he did not catch a ball, but was out there, and they all felt very comfortable with what he had done. But in the Lions game, in the Dolphins game, he was effective with the catch and stretch that one out. So they can feel like they've got a couple of guys that can go long, go deep, and perhaps pull off the catch. I think at some point we're going to be disappointed by him dropping a ball that might be a big play. But if he continues to stretch things in that way, he might create big plays in other directions. So,
Yeah.
So his addition could be very helpful. The defensive key that I would go for relative to this game, control the running game. The Lions have excellent backs. We all realize that, but other teams, other opponents of the Lions that have conquered them have been effective at controlling their running game. The Packers gave up 118 yards. That's not 70s eras, 90s eras Steelers run shutdown, but 24 of those yards came on one Jared Goff scramble. So now you're taking it down to about 80 yards. I think it's, for the most part, the Steelers can live with that. If they can keep them to 80, 90 yards, I think they could be really successful. The Rams did better than that, and the Rams are not an elite defense. They're an excellent team, but not an elite defense. They only gave up 70 to the Lions.
Yeah, so Gibbs has only had one game over 68 yards in the ground in the last 5. That was huge. He blew out the Giants himself with 219 yards or something like that. But the other 4 games in that pack of 5 that, as I mentioned, loss, win, like everything else they've done.
Right.
He's been 68 or under.
Yeah, so that's a part of the game. They've shown they can do it. They've done it. They've shown they cannot do it as well, but they showed they could do it against Miami when Miami had very little else on the table, and they still were able to do it. And so I that's something that they have to be able to control the run when the passing game is also a threat. That's an element of this sport that they still haven't totally shown that they're capable of doing.
That's exactly where I was going. Sorry. I was just going to, my defensive key is hand in glove with what you're talking about right there. And actually the point that you made about the run defense. And that is, hey, I'm sorry, guys. You got to do more than one thing at once. Like for all the griping that we've done about the Steelers run defense, when they have been able to just key in and stop a back, they've stopped the back. They slowed H.N. They slowed Taylor. They slowed Josh Jacobs. Their issues have come where they've had to defend a quarterback and a running back at the same time. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert with Kamani Vidal. Herbert's the 3rd leading rusher amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. Who else am I forgetting about? There's another guy in there that I probably wanted to throw into that mix. Oh, Justin Fields and Breece Hall. Right. When they've had to think about a running quarterback and a running back, they've had problems. Correspondingly, they've also had some issues when it comes to, all right, we want to key on a back, but then they've left themselves vulnerable to the passing game. Right. Mentioned Jacobs. Well, then you saw Jordan Love go off. They got spooked by Chase Brown in the first half of the Bengal game, of the first Bengal game. They adjusted on the fly. They tried to take away Chase Brown, and then they got lit up by Flacco and the 2 wide receivers. Right. I'd also argue that they did a really good job against Swift and the Bears running game, but then Caleb Williams threw for 3 touchdowns. And let's be honest, if he was more accurate, he would have had 5.
Yes.
So, that's kind of where I was going with the thought of how they have to be more cognizant of, yes, throw a lot of attention, throw a lot of weight against one individual running back who might be a star as Gibbs is, but then you can't get burned by Montgomery, and you can't just say, okay, we'll let Jared Goff and the receivers beat us, because my God, will they? They absolutely will.
Absolutely. My bonus key is kind of non-football related. So tell me what yours is as we move forward.
My non-football. Oh, that's about what Aaron Rodgers had to say. So okay. Aaron Rodgers, I wrote about this today in the Trib. This is a little bit of an intangible. This is for my bonus key. It's a bit of an intangible because Rodgers came off the field to the interview with Lisa Salters in the waning moments of the broadcast on Monday Night Football. And he talked about belief. He said he wants to see more of the belief there because we won in the cold. We're in first place by a game over the Ravens. And he was chronicling all these things that are going right. And he said the belief can start to rise now. And I think he was talking about within the walls of the locker room. I think. But I also think that whether it was conscious or subconscious, he was talking to us in the media and he was talking to the fans as well. Now, he can talk to his players all he wants, And, I kind of brought this up with some other players, Cam, Jack Sawyer, a couple guys I talked to yesterday. He's like, oh, yeah, we never lost faith. We never lost belief. All right, well, great. You probably shouldn't, because if you have, then there's no reason for us to believe. If the players don't have belief, why should we? But they've also been really high on their own supply for the last 8 years. This is a team that always thinks it's in it. This is a team that always talks like it's in it. This is a team that always acts like it's in it and like it can do something in the playoffs, and it hasn't for 8 years. I'm not worried about the belief of the players. If Rodgers is trying to sell us in the media, sell the fans, that sale's not going to go through until January. Like this is a game where if you go to Detroit and you beat the Lions, especially if you outscore them to do it, I think a lot of people might say, oh, there might be something here. Like, they might be a team that could do some damage, but still, no one's going to believe it until it's January in the playoffs. A win over the Dolphins in 2-degree weather at home isn't going to sell the populace.
Well, I here's where I'll differ with you just a little bit. I think that if he is speaking to the fans, he's not speaking to Twitter. He doesn't care about Twitter. And he doesn't care necessarily about, although it may affect their daily life in the locker room a little, I think that what he's really talking to are the 70,000 fans in the stadium. Because you had, on the one hand, what we saw and heard in the Buffalo game, during the Buffalo game, and then what we saw and heard on Monday night, the response that they got. And I think he wants that response in place for the second Baltimore game, for whatever, if indeed some combination of success in the next 3 games conveys an opportunity to have a home playoff game. I think he wants to see it then too. I'm not I think if they won out, I think there'd be a lot of people believing. And I think the biggest reason to believe in this team relative to the playoffs, if indeed they get there, and I'm not saying they will, but the biggest reason to believe is the fact that the AFC playoff picture is not what it was 2 years ago. It's not what it was even last year. With the Chiefs starting to waver a little bit, still finding a way to go 15-2 and ultimately go 18-2. They were starting. This isn't like that. I mean, there are certainly somebody's going to be really good. It could be Buffalo. It could be New England. But you've been on the field with both of them. New England, you managed to find a way to beat. Buffalo, you played pretty poorly and still were ahead at half, and then played even worse and lost. So I think that's the difference. The last several playoff appearances, the one led by Mace, the one led by last year by Russ, and then in 2021 led by the ghost of Ben, those were all cameos, and everyone knew it. The only way anybody expected them to win any of those 3 games was if they got some lucky breaks. The KC game, they got a lucky break. They went up 7-0, and they needed another dozen or so to win that game, and they weren't coming. And then it was also the same was true when they played 2 years ago in Buffalo. They would have had to have probably a few less breaks, but still some. And then last year, I think that they kind of broke themselves with them. The schedule broke them, and then they succumbed to the breaking with how they responded to the schedule. Instead of just taking those 3 games and throwing them in the trash, saying, this is what the NFL did to us. We're not letting it happen to us. They went on against the Bengals and said, everything that just happened in those 3 games, we're broken. So I think that's different in that sense. But this team still has to show that it can get there. And getting there probably means winning at least 2 games. Doesn't necessarily, but it probably does. And winning 2 of these 3 games, you either win in Detroit, which is an impressive team, you win in Cleveland, where you often struggle, or you stare down your chief rival and your obvious competition for the AFC North. So
and you sweep them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what would change the belief system in terms of what's possible heading into if there's a postseason.
What was the point you wanted to bring up about turnovers?
Yeah, about turnovers. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that.
Key, and I think it's a good one. So,
yeah, that was actually my stat pack.
Oh,
The
is this your?
turnover is
I'm
my
sorry.
stat.
I'm sorry.
No, my
bad.
bonus key is if you're going to the game. I've been to Detroit for Bengals game as a spectator. And I want to tell those who are lucky enough to be heading that they are in for, I believe, the best viewing experience that you can have in the NFL, because you're not going to be cold and your seats are right there. And the way they designed Ford Field, they designed Ford Field for the fan, not for like the guy in the luxury box. And not that there aren't luxury boxes, they got them, but they designed it for the fan. They want you close to the stadium. They are close to the field. In the stadium is close to the field. It's a fantastic viewing experience. So jealous of the people who are going to go get to experience that. And then my other bonus key is if you are going, there's a place in Greektown called the Astoria Pastry Shop. And they have everything they do is wonderful, but they have these chocolate cannolis with the chocolate buttercream filling. The only other place I've ever gotten them, there's a place in the Strip. I won't name it because I don't love theirs. They have other great things, but I don't love theirs. And the other place I've got it is in the north end of Boston.
Mike's
yeah.
Pastry, right?
Yes. So if you're going, hit Astoria and take my recommendation to eat the chocolate cannoli.
It's right near Paul Revere's house.
That's the one in the north end. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's another one. Oh, what's it called? They're kind of across the street from each other. It's sort of like Pat's and Geno's. It was Pastry Wars.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know what you're talking about, and it is good. The thing that I will always remember about Ford Field and seeing a Steelers game there in Detroit was the Super Bowl. And we're coming up on the anniversary of Super Bowl 40. They've had the team in. And I tell this story often. And when people ask, what do you remember about that Super Bowl? And I remember plenty from the game. But what I remember more than anything else was the drive home and just seeing all that wave of terrible towels and Pittsburgh bumper stickers and Pennsylvania license plates and getting off to, take a leak on the side of the road at a rest stop and needing to find parking and having to walk half a mile to the rest stop because everybody was doing the same thing. However big Ford Field is, 70,000, 75,000, whatever it was, there was 125,000 people there from Pittsburgh, it felt like. And they all drove home at the same time. And rush hour on the Monday after the Super Bowl, I think, was greater for Pittsburghers leaving Detroit than it was in the Fort Pitt Bridge, because I just remember sitting in traffic. It's like a 4.5 hour drive or something like that to Detroit. It took us 6.5 hours to get home because it was bumper to bumper with nothing but Pittsburghers. I will never forget that. I will remember the drive home from that Super Bowl more than I ever will the Super Bowl itself because of how many Pittsburghers left. And I don't think they all went to the game. It was just close enough that they were there the whole week. Yes. And it was, this is finally our time. This is finally our Super Bowl after the drought since 1980, which I don't want to say anything, but hey, we're closer to that than anybody else wants to admit, going back to Tampa in 2008. But I digress. And I will agree about Ford Field. It is a good indoor stadium. And whenever Pittsburgh builds its dome in a couple years, Mike, I hope they do it just as well as they did at Ford Field.
Yes, I hope so as well. And I hope they, like Detroit, have in mind the viewing experience of the fan and not, hey, let's allow the billionaires to have all this wasted space, as we've seen in so many NBA arenas.
Let me say this. When they do build the dome in Pittsburgh, whenever that might be, and wherever they build it, there will be carping. There will be crying. This isn't real football. This isn't AFC North football. This isn't Steeler football. I'll bring up the jersey again. 7 years I spent in Syracuse, 7 football seasons. Not once did I ever walk into this building and say, man, I wish I was outside today. Not one time. You'll get used to it and you'll appreciate it.
I have already heard that start about Cleveland's intent to build a dome. That I've already heard the carping start, not in Cleveland necessarily, but in Pittsburgh, another way to criticize Cleveland. Have already heard it on the airwaves around here, people complaining about, is it real football? So if we ever get there here, you're definitely going to hear it.
Yeah, and I'll definitely be fine with it because I didn't like doing my stand-ups outside in 2-degree weather the other day. All right, let's get away from our keys. You can always post your comments about what you think the keys for the game will be on Sunday. I mentioned Mike's stat. We'll get to our stat pack soon, but let's go to the other sideline and look at this from a Detroit perspective. And I might have already jumped the gun on my own, but my big thing for the Lions is get Gibbs going. As I mentioned before, he's had a good receiving day against the Cowboys. He had a good total yardage day against the Cowboys, but he's only had the one big breakout running game over the past month plus. And with the Steelers' issues stopping the run against teams that are diversified, and they are, I would think that this is a game not only to win the game by getting Gibbs going, but also just getting him back in top form for the stretch run.
I couldn't agree more. I think that that's huge for the Lions. And it as we said before, because of the fact that the Steelers have struggled to cope with both at the same time, probably the only game in which they did that was the Indy game, because Daniel Jones, he does have some really good wideouts. Alec Pierce, he's got the great tight end, and Tyler Warren, and they were able to shut that down as well as Taylor at the same time. It's probably the only game all year when they've had to face both elements of the sport and been really comfortable in defending both. So this is another challenge in that regard. You're going to give up some yards. You're going to give up some points. You can't feel like you failed if one guy has a successful day, as long as it's not an overwhelming day. For the Lions, I think that they have to look at it, and I know they, like you said, win loss, but their struggle recently has been not to the degree of Steelers 2024, but their schedule has been somewhat their struggles have been somewhat schedule related. Even though they beat the Cowboys, they gave a ton of yards and a lot of points, and the Cowboys got to 30. They just couldn't. The Cowboys have a terrible defense and couldn't stop the Lions at all. But the Rams, Cowboys, and the Packers in a row, that's 2, 4, and 10 in scoring average in the NFL that they faced. The Steelers are 13, so they're not awful in that department. But I don't think we look at this Steelers team and say, "Wow, how do we stop them? How do we hold down their points?" Sometimes the Steelers willingly hold down their own points. So I think the Lions have to look at this game with some degree of confidence that they can be themselves again, and expect that to be to have a competitive advantage between that and the home field, that they should feel confident that they can win this game. So I think that's the most important element of this for them, is the approach that says this is not a breather, but it's also not having to climb Everest and try to stop the Rams.
Well, I jumped the gun on your stat pack, so why don't you give us your stat number for this week?
Yeah, as I mentioned before earlier in the show, that I looking for the element of the Lions that explains them statistically, that explains what their weaknesses are. I thought, my first thought was, well, they must be turning it over because they're a high-powered offense and they score a ton of points, so they must be shedding the ball constantly in order to have the 8-6 mark that they are, and the much greater struggle to reach the postseason than the Steelers face right now. The Steelers really could just win the last game and get in, and they also could not win any games and get in if the Ravens were to lose the next two. I believe that's mathematically the right formula. But the Lions are going to struggle to get in regardless. So they're facing a difficult situation. And through all of that, they've only turned over the ball 8 times all year. How is that possible? That's first of all, it's how is it possible, period. Second of all, how is it possible you've only turned it over 8 times and still lost 6 games? That's the number that, of all the numbers that I looked at in regards to this game, I kept having to go back and say, am I looking at this wrong? Am I looking at the wrong column? But that's the number. They have only committed 8 turnovers all year. Goff doesn't throw picks. They don't fumble. I think Goff has 5 picks and they have 3 fumbles, I think is the total. For all the offensive plays they've run, because they've scored so many points. So the Steelers can't go into this game and give it away much. I mentioned a week ago, the stat now is 6-0 for the Steelers when they don't turn it over at all. which is pretty remarkable correlation between that and how many victories they have overall. So they can't give it up much, but they also can't go in expecting that to be a huge component of what they do to win this football game.
Well, I'll give you one more where you're talking about trying to figure out where they're bad or where they've gone wrong, the Lions. They give up 7.5 yards per pass attempt. That's better than only 5 defenses. The Cowboys and Bengals being 2 of them, 2 other historically bad defenses. So that's another one. Like we talked about outside the numbers and to the receivers specifically, but just per pass attempt, the Lions could be better. Their secondary is banged up. They are trying to patch it over. Like when you hear Mike Tomlin talk about, well, they do have Arthur Millette and DeMonte KZ and trying to spin that as a positive somehow, that's telling you where the state of affairs is for the secondary with the Lions. I'll give you one more, though, and this is sort of a positive one for the Steelers. It comes from the 33rd team. Teams with the lowest pressure rates allowed this season entering week 16. The Steelers at 26.5%. The Rams at 30.5%. And that's, with some injuries along the offensive line. That's with Broderick Jones. That's with Dylan Cook playing a full game last week and half a game against the Ravens. I will be really interested to see how they approach what they're going to do pass protection-wise with Aiden Hutchinson in this game. He is listed as a right defensive end. He'll move around, but he is listed as a right defensive end. That means over Cook. How much help do you give to Dylan Cook there? Or because he played as well as he did over the last 2 weeks with Brian Baldinger slobbering all over him over how great of a job he did? Do you just leave him out there and say, you try Aiden Hutchinson by yourself a couple times? I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll throw a lot of help his way. And then what does that do as far as how you have to play to the right side where your strength is theoretically on this offensive line anyway? It'll be interesting to see how they approach that and exactly how much they do try to keep guys in and help with Hutchinson so long as he's on the right side of the Detroit defense.
Well, I think that what connects to that is just the general feel of how Aaron Rodgers has been the last few games. Look, I think he has started to trust the offensive line more. I think he feels more comfortable out there or exhibits more comfort, maybe would be because we don't know how he feels, but we know how he looks. And we have seen at times this season when he has been very uncomfortable with what pressure was allowed. And I that frustrated me because I'm watching the primary game that would exhibit this is the game at the Chargers, where the Steelers put Justin Herbert down 5 times and he still put up big numbers because he didn't allow that to define the game. And I thought there were games where Aaron allowed the fact that someone was near him to define the game. I think he appears to be past that. He appears to be at a degree of comfort with this offensive line. There are going to be times when you go down.
This pressure rates, the fact that we're talking about Stafford and Rodgers at the top, I mean, it's way more about the quarterback than it is the offensive line.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But no one's A, staying upright the all game, every game. And B, never having to say, okay, oh gosh, there's a guy coming out here. I guess I got to go that way. Or, okay, I'll roll out, or whatever it might be. Or sometimes, as he did, I think it was the Baltimore game, where he let a guy go completely over his shoulder and survive the play to complete a pass. You have to do that. You can't expect to stand back there untouched, unpressured, and on every play and pick apart a defense. There are going to be times when that happens. If you like when in Bengals 1, where they mounted no pass rush at all, you can do that. But you have to be willing to respond to that pressure that you receive. And I think we've seen that a lot more from Aaron Rodgers in the last 2 games.
Time now for Who Will Take Flight. This is where we talk about Flight Night at Mike's, Monday Night Football. It's Old Man Rivers, Phil Rivers against the San Francisco 49ers. Go to Mike's, get yourself a flight, sample one of their many draft beers, a couple of their draft beers. Get 5 little pours and have yourself a nice evening watching the San Francisco 49ers from the best division in football, the NFC West. Boy, was that on display last night. You look at that, and it's like every team is double-digit wins and only 3 or 4 losses, except for the Cardinals, who have yet to win a division game. So everybody's beating up on them and then taking off from there. But it's the Niners against the Colts with Rivers at quarterback. So that'll be an interesting watch, regardless of how things go, even though it is an NFC game on Monday Night Flight Night at Mike's. For me, why don't you go first? You go first in your flight.
Yeah, for the Steelers, it's pretty obvious that the player who needs to take flight is Jack Sawyer, because whether he gets Herbig back in front of him, or whether he is just the lone player and they have to bring somebody in, and I know they have signed a player that's available in case Herbig isn't able to go. Sawyer is
Jeremiah Moon.
Yes. Sawyer has got to have a significant game on Monday night
against Penny Sewell, by the way.
Yeah. Well, even if he doesn't make a ton of plays, he has to make sure that Sewell isn't getting to the next level. He has to make sure that Sewell isn't completely throwing him out of the play, and therefore there's a huge lane to run through. He's got to do a good job at what is available. Sewell is a great player, and so you may not be out there getting to Goff over and over again, or making the initial play on the run, but play the edge intelligently. Don't just try to create traffic. Make sure that you are there to string the run out if it comes your way. Make sure that it's not just, okay, I'm just going to take Sewell out of the way and let's leave it to Joey to make the tackle on Gibbs coming around the edge. That was the one criticism I had of TJ's play this year was not how many sacks he was getting. It was how often he crashed down on the outside and just let the guys behind him make the play, or decided that he was going to just go ahead and crash on the fake handoff and make a beautiful play, except that the guy didn't have the ball. That would be my one criticism of TJ's play to this year. I don't want to see that from Sawyer. I think there needs to be more control in how they approach the stopping of the run, and I think they did that on Monday night. They were not throwing themselves on blocks just for the sake of doing it. There was a lot more intelligence in the way they stopped the Miami run.
Well, there's 4 different guys from the Lions on the injury report. Sorry, take that back. 6 different Lions on the injury report to some degree or another, whether it's limited participation, full participation, on, off, whatever. 6 guys are mentioned who are offensive linemen. So, they've got guys who are playing through stuff. They've got guys who are dotting around, but Sewell hurt his ankle in that last game, and he isn't on the injury report. So they're listing a lot and not him. So I'm assuming then he's healthy enough and good to go. And Sawyer's going to have himself quite the tough time. Like you said, you wrote it in the rundown, our fabled rundown here, Mike, that it better be Sawyer. And I'm sort of the same mind with my guy, and that is Dylan Cook, who I just talked about. My guy to take flight, it better be Dylan Cook, because for as much as Aaron Rodgers is good at getting rid of the ball quickly, like we just talked about, and protecting himself, he's going to have to be one-on-one with Hutchinson at some point. At some point, he's going to have to be. So don't let that turn into a circus.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and from my point of view for Denver, I'm going to go with the 2 linebackers, Campbell and Anzalone, for the reasons I pointed out before. They play base a ton. They'll be out there a ton, and they're going to have to take away the middle of the field if the Steelers feel like they can go there all of a sudden again after what happened last week.
For the Lions, for me, I'm going Jamison Williams, who has, in the last 3 weeks, 29 catches for 274 yards. 29 catches, 274 yards, 3 weeks, okay? Only one Steelers wideout, and I bet you can guess who it is, has more than 29 catches all season. So there's Wilson? A number for you. Yeah, that's him. You're right.
Skowronek.
Yeah, you got it.
Let's go around the league here. We got to do that before we get to our predictions and get to some comments. And I'll start off by talking about that game last night. It was unreal. I thought the Rams-Lions game was as entertaining as it was going to get. Then I saw the Seahawks-Rams game. I think to a point, if you're Sean McVay, you want to cease being in so many entertaining games and want to make your defense have them be more dull, because it was going down that road for a while in that contest. Then all of a sudden, you had the Rashid Shaheed punt return. Okay, I get why they made the call that they did on the 2-point conversion. Technically, it looked like a backwards pass, and then the ball just bounced into the end zone. And Charbonnet got a 2-point conversion on a play he didn't even know he was making. Mike, I want to see across the landscape of fantasy football how many semifinal victories go because of 2 points to Zach Charbonnet. All right? Like, that's going to be the siren song of the defeated in fantasy football this week.
I love it. I will say that one of the things that I noticed this week was the number of people, and I wrote about this at sportingnews.com, the number of people in our business who wrote that the Chiefs dynasty is dead. Like, that was the headline in multiple, the ESPN.com was graceful enough to say, is the Chiefs dynasty dead? But there were others that said it's dead. That just pronounced to DOA, time of death, 7 p.m. Sunday night, whatever it was, that they were done. And I just don't understand why we can't learn from history. Remember, the Patriots won Super Bowls in 01, 03, 04. And then they didn't win another one for another decade. But they were still great all that time. They were 17-0 in one season. Or 16-0, I think it was still at that point. In 2007, they were 16-0. They went all the way to the Super Bowl, so they were technically 19-0 before they finally got felled by the helmet catch. They ultimately redid their roster, resurrected it, but still had
one of the years Brady didn't play.
Yeah, the 2008 season when he was injured, and that also connects to this dismissal of the Chiefs dynasty. Well, Patrick is hurt, so it's over. Well, Brady's was in 2008. He came back and he won 4 Super Bowls subsequent to his ACL tear. So I just let's chill. The Chiefs are not going to make the playoffs this year, but a dynasty is not defined by a specific era in which you won X number of championships. We are there over and over again at the very top of the sport. And I'm not ready to write the Chiefs off out of that, even if next year's a tough year because we don't know what Patrick's timeline, what his return timeline will be. He should be able to return in time for the start of next regular season, if not, if not close to it. But I still think the Chiefs have a lot of good football in them down the road. There are going to be changes. Travis Kelce's getting pretty close to the end of his career, his Hall of Fame career. Andy Reid, 68, is going to have to make some decisions about what he wants to do. But I still think as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, you've got a chance to be great.
Do the Patriots beat the Ravens?
Wow. They should.
I think it's bad news for the Ravens that the Patriots lost last week.
I think it was great news for the Steelers that the Patriots lost last week.
Right.
Because however, if you were still holding out wild card hopes, however much it empowered the Bills, it put the Patriots in a position where this is a kind of a must win for them. There are certainly mathematical ways they can win the division without winning this game, but you have to look at it at this point in the year when you are nose to nose with your chief competition for the division, that you have to win every game because you're going to expect them to win every game. And so it's enormous for the Patriots. And I do think that we have, like what we saw last week from the Bengals and the Ravens, felt a lot more Bengal-y to me than it did Raven-y, if you know what I mean.
What did you want to say about the Dwight Clark catch? How did this come up?
Yeah, did you see, if you saw the incredible catch or pass that Caleb Williams threw in the Bears' most recent game, it came from almost the exact direction that Montana's throw to Dwight Clark in, I think it was the 81 or 82.
81 NFC Championship
81 NFC Championship game. And it came from almost the exact direction Montana threw. And his was actually through 3 defenders, Caleb Williams was. And so I saw someone breaking it down and talking about it and in comparing the two. And it just reminded me of how the catch, as they like to call it, is the single most overrated play in NFL history. They replay it as if it were the immaculate reception. It's not that great a play. There are Like the catch.
Yeah,
the kid
but
made,
you know what though, Mike? The Immaculate Reception is overrated too when you think about it. If you're trying to, the reason why that play gets as much attention, like the Immaculate Reception, is that they are parallel in the sense that they sort of announce the dawn of a dynasty, right?
okay, if you
Like
want to
that,
say that,
historically, the Immaculate Reception is much more famous because of the play itself, how it happened, the bizarre nature of it, all of that. But it's also important because it announced the arrival of a dynasty. What happened the next week? They lost.
yes.
What happened the next year? They lost in the playoffs one round earlier, right?
Yes.
So, like, it's
Yes.
not like it led them to a Super Bowl or it won them a Super Bowl. Whereas, now that I'm saying it out loud, actually, didn't that play get the Niners to a Super Bowl?
It got them to it, and they won it. They beat the Bengals.
In New Orleans or what? No, in Minnesota, right? Or Detroit.
Actually, it was in Detroit. Yeah, it was in the Superdome.
Superdome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, actually, the Clark catch, in terms of what it meant for that year and what it meant for that championship, was more important than the Immaculate Reception. The Immaculate Reception was just a crazier play.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the Immaculate Reception was insane as how it happened. So that's why it's special. It won a game, and the composition of how it worked out, and the rules at the time, and the mystery, and did it really hit him, and all that stuff. That all plays into it. But for me, this is presented as an incredible football play. When what I would compare it to in Steelers history is the Santonio Holmes catch, which to me is a much more difficult throw and catch than the Clark play. But I don't think that the Santonio Holmes catch gets nearly as much publicity and it's not just a matter of years and accumulation, but even now, like, I don't even think the Holmes catch has a nickname, and it's a dumb nickname to call it the catch. It's another of my pet peeves. If your rivalry is called the game, try harder. Like, come up with something like the backyard brawl. Have a good name. But anyway, I just wanted to go down that rabbit hole because I wanted to put it on the record somewhere.
Now every name you can't do anymore. You can't call it the Civil War. You can't call it the Holy War. You're not allowed to do that. So all the good names.
You can always find, like I said, if you can find the backyard brawl, there's something out there that fits your rivalry that makes it better than the game. We've got the game Harvard, Yale. We got the game Michigan, Ohio State. And we got the game Stanford, Cal. They can't all be the game.
Well, it's usually Michigan, Ohio State. That's for sure between all those. Although on Ivy League levels, Harvard, Yale's pretty good too. Have you ever been to a Harvard, Yale game?
I have not.
It's exactly what you think it is. It's people tailgating in fur coats with expensive cars and tons of white wine. I've been to Harvard Yale tailgates. If it was anything else, you'd be disappointed, right? Like if you weren't tailgating with caviar and sushi at a Harvard Yale game and they just had kielbasa and pierogies, you'd be upset, right? Like you want it to be different, don't you? You don't want it to be with a Chevy pickup truck. You want it to be out of the back of a BMW, correct? Yes. Okay.
100%.
So they play the part. I've been to Harvard Yale tailgates and they play the part. So
that's awesome.
All right.
That is awesome.
Let's get to some comments here. And we'll start with Pete Serene, who says, if it's loss, win, then what did they do last game? Well, they lost. So that means it's probably going to be a win against the Steelers. I am going to pick the Lions. I'll give you a score in a minute, but I am going to pick Detroit. But I do think the Steelers are going to stay in this one. This to me, in a good way and a bad way, I have a feeling like this is going to be that game against the Saints. Remember when Juju fumbled in overtime or at the end of the game? I guess it was at the end of the game. Maybe
it was the end of the game,
quarter. Yeah. Shootout back and forth. The Steelers needed that game late in the season. Was that right before or right after the Jesse James play, maybe? If I'm remembering,
that was. I think that was 18. I think that was one of I think that was a playoff decider type game. That was the one that put them, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that put them on the cusp, but then they needed help, right?
Then they needed help, and they didn't get it from the Baltimore.
That was part of the 2018 collapse. You're right about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. And then they had they saved their season for a second against the Patriots in the Jalen Samuel game where he had 158 yards rushing and Hayden picked off Brady. That's what it was. Yeah. But no, that sort of interconference, it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be tense. It's going to be exciting. 425 game. Like, I feel like it's got that kind of vibe like it did in 2018. So it's going to be a fun game, I think, but I do think Detroit's going to win to sort of underscore Pete's point. This guy says, feel that steel, his name is. I'm in the I know mode. I know it's just another season under the standard.
How? What is the standard?
The standard is what Mike Tomlin said it is, Mike. The standard is the standard.
The standard is the standard.
Yeah,
but I don't.
You know what he meant by that? It's winning Super Bowls. It's being in Super Bowl contention.
I'm just gonna say this one more time. I have followed this team since I was 10 years old. So that means that that would mean 49 years that I would have to be miserable. I'm not doing that. Like, they've won it 6 times. That's more than anyone else. I don't buy that this is under the standard. First of all, we don't know where it's going.
Well, it's not more than the Patriots. It's as many as.
Yeah, it's more than everybody, but
no one else has more.
The Patriots no one else has more, right? So I don't buy. I think the standard is that they remain in the picture, and they have been in varying degrees of the picture in this playoffs skid. They were in 17, could have been and should have been. Jesse James caught it. Number 1 seed in 2021, as I mentioned before, they had to have a series of fortunate events just to get in. And we're fortunate to be there. So these seasons aren't all the same. They are all, in the end, not what you'd love them to be. And they haven't been anywhere near what you'd love them to be from 17 to today. But we still don't know where this one is headed. And I'm not saying that I believe that they're going to make the Super Bowl. I'm not even saying I believe they're going to make the playoffs. I think they have a very good chance, but I still don't know what this team is. That's the thing that when people say, "Oh, I know that this is another 9-8 or whatever," I still don't know what this team is. I've seen them play excellent football, and I've seen them play disappointing football. I haven't seen a lot of horrendous. There have been horrendous halves, but full horrendous games, there hasn't been a lot of that. So it is an odd and hard team to define for me.
Javon says, Eagles going back to the Super Bowl, mark my words. I mean, I can see it, but I like all those teams in the West a lot better. Maybe not the Niners, but I like the top 2 teams better. I just think it's going to be a tougher path for the Eagles. He also adds Aaron Rodgers needs to retire. He gets broken up too easy. I don't know what he means by that. I actually think that Rodgers has played 2 of his better games the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
I mean, I would have bought that a little bit more readily had we seen that post after the Buffalo game, but he's been a lot better the last 2 weeks, particularly the last 6 quarters. Victor says, I've been a Browns fan for 50 years, and when I die, I want 6 Cleveland Browns to be my pallbearers. That way they can let me down one last time. Yeah, I've heard that one before in various forums. I think I've heard that about Pirates, too, 6 Pittsburgh Pirates as well. But it's just as applicable for the Browns. Indeed.
It's more applicable for the Browns depending on how old you are, because my lifetime, they've won 3 World Series. The Browns in my lifetime won 1 NFL championship, I believe it is, and have been nowhere near it since.
We've also got to be concerned, though, for as bad as the Browns always are, it doesn't matter. The Steelers the last 7 years have won in Cleveland 1 time.
Oh, yeah. So it's going to be a challenge next week, but obviously they've got a greater one right ahead of them.
All right, Mike, we're coming up against it, so let's get to our predictions, all right? What, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm just going to say, don't take me seriously because I've picked against the Steelers multiple weeks in a row, at least the last 2. They've won both times, so I'm not changing up on that. I'm going to go Detroit 31, Steelers 26. I was going to hit my prop last week. I had it so easy. I was under 1.5 touchdowns, I think it was, for Tua touchdown passes. And like, they weren't ever going to score a touchdown unless the Steelers said, go ahead and score a touchdown. Unfortunately, relative to the prop, the Steelers ultimately did say, go ahead and score a couple, and they did.
All right, well, I'm going to go with the Lions here, as I mentioned I would before. By the way, I'm trying. Now you got me thinking. I can't remember what my prop was last week. I'll find it. But I know I got the game right. I picked the Steelers to beat the Dolphins. I'll pick the Lions, and I pushed on the spread, by the way. I'll pick the Lions here. 33-27 is my final score. Here's a note for you. 15 straight wins for Detroit after a loss. So they don't have back-to-back losses like we were talking about before. My prop, Montgomery, over 37.5 rushing yards at -118. This kind of goes in line with what I was saying before. When the Steelers tend to overload to stop one guy, somebody else hurts you. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Montgomery hit that number with ease this time around. For maybe he's like the Keaton Mitchell or whatever his name was from Baltimore at the big run, or like, you're worried about the props of the receivers of the Cincinnati Bengals, and then Chase Brown walks away with 136. Like I could see something like that happening. You know what I mean?
I did forget to mention, I think my score on the game, I believe, I don't know if I mentioned, was 31-26. If I didn't, so I think we both have them covering, which is an interesting.
It was 6.5 last I saw.
Yeah, I saw a 7.
So I've got mine under because I got it at 6. Oh, you saw it at 6, you're saying?
I thought yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was 6.5, so that's a cover. At mine is 5, so that's a cover for on the Steelers side, is what I'm saying. Not on the Lions side, but on the Steelers side, that's a cover. And my prop for this week, I forgot to mention, is Rodgers over 199.5 is the even money line.
Oh, he'll get. I didn't see that one. I should have gone with that one. That's he's going to get that because they might be behind and they'll be catching up. And like we've talked about a number of times, those corners and the field outside the numbers where they like to live, they're going to find some room there. They're going to hit a few balls, I think.
There you go.
Especially in a dome inside, not having to worry about the weather. As I look outside, and it's blowing snow around out there again after being 55 yesterday and thunder or whatever the hell was happening last night. All right, Mike, I appreciate it. Have a good Christmas, and we'll catch up the day after Christmas before the Cleveland game, all right?
All right. Merry Christmas to you, Tim. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody that's made this show the fun episode that it's been. This is, I think, our 18th so far. We appreciate you for sticking with us through all of that.
Yeah, and helping us grow the brand. First year out there. Hopefully people come back for the rest of this year and into next season as well. Thanks to our sponsor, Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's.